The Houthis targeted U.S. military ships and aircraft, hit commercial ships, including U.S. flagged vessels, threatened our personnel overseas, and attacked our allies in the region. This resulted in more than a year of U.S. flagged commercial ships being prevented from safely sailing through the Suez Canal, the Red Sea, and the Gulf of Aden. This had a massive negative impact on global trade of the economic security of the United States. Joe Biden was the commander-in-chief, and he sat on his hands while the United States of America was bullied and embarrassed by terrorists. President Trump and his team are putting a stop to these threats in restoring American strength around the world. The Trump peace through strength approach means no terrorist force will stop American commercial and naval vessels from freely sailing the waterways of the world. But unfortunately, this is not what the Democrats and the media want to talk about. They are focused on a coordinated campaign to try and sow chaos in this White House. And this has been the most successful first 2 months of any administration ever, which is exactly why they are doing this. We are not going to bend in the face of this insincere outrage. And here's just one example of how bad faith the Democrats' criticisms are. Democrat Senator Mark Warner is hysterical over the use of Signal, which is an approved decrypted app, in the killing of Houthi terrorists. But Senator Warner himself used Signal to work with a lobbyist for a Russian oligarch to connect the disgraced Steele dossier author who started the Russia hoax, which Jeffrey Goldberg later reported on. How ironic. We're not going to lose focus of the bottom line, which is that Joe Biden's weakness enabled and emboldened Houthi terrorists, and President Trump's strength and resolve eliminated those terrorists. Here in our new media seat today, we have Lindsay Keith. She is the managing editor for Merit TV and serves as their White House correspondent. Merit TV launched 1 year ago and creates and distributes content across diverse platforms. We're glad to have you with us, Lindsay. Please kick us off.
Thank you, Caroline. I appreciate it and this opportunity for Merit TV. 2 questions, if I may. One on Signal, one on the economy.
Sure.
On Signal, how comfortable is the president with what was shared so far now that the chain has been released?
The president's view on all of this remains the same today as it did yesterday. And I think it speaks volumes about the leadership of this president that he went directly to all of you, members of the press corps. He was asked, do you want someone else to go out and do a briefing? And he said, no, I will tackle this story. I will discuss it. The people need to hear from me about this situation. And so his thoughts on this remain the same today. He has placed great trust in his national security team. And as for the usage of Signal, as the president said yesterday, as the CIA director has testified under oath, this is an approved app. It's an encrypted app. The Department of Defense, the Department of State, the CIA has it loaded onto government phones because it is the most secure and efficient way to communicate. As for, again, the original situation in this messaging thread, the National Security Council, the White House counsel's office continues to look in to how this mistake, which the National Security Advisor has owned, occurred, and the president has ensured they are doing that.
On the economy, consumer confidence hit a 4-year low this month. Can you help explain to the American people how tariffs will help them in the long run?
Yeah, absolutely, and I'm grateful for the question. The American public will hear later this afternoon from the president directly on the topic of tariffs. And as you all know, April 2nd day, President Trump has proudly dubbed it Liberation Day for our country. What he means by that is it will be a day where the United States of America will no longer be ripped off by nations around this world. It will be a day where Americans finally see free and fair trade practices restored. We are no longer going to allow our allies, our competitors, and our adversaries to take advantage of American workers. And if you think about your hometown and the state that you grew up, Main Street looks a lot different today than it did many years ago. And President Trump wants to restore America as a manufacturing superpower around the globe. He wants products to be made right here in our great country with great hardworking American hands that will ultimately result in higher wages and more money in the pockets of the American people. And he's also, in addition to tariffs, also determined to pass tax cuts later this year, as he did successfully in his first term, to put even more money back into the pockets of hardworking Americans. Peter.
Caroline, if I can ask you very quickly about the information we've seen, just to set the predicate to all this. Has the president been briefed and physically seen he's seen all the details of the chat as printed by the Atlantic?
I just spoke to the president about it, yes.
Okay. Then let me ask you, if I can, very quickly. In the chat, Pete Hegseth, the defense secretary, details F-18s, Tomahawks, so some of the weapons that were used. He details the timing involved for this, all of which occurred 31 minutes before, as he says, F-18s would launch. The DoD manual details classified information as significant military plans, saying that is secret, that's classified. So what about, there are no methods, there are no sources, but that's not what is determines what's classified. So what is it about what Pete Hegseth wrote that makes you say this is not classified?
Well, it's not just me saying that, Peter. It's the Secretary of Defense himself who is saying this as well. And he put out a very strong statement earlier today listing all of the things that were not included in that message that he sent to the group. And again, this message, there was no classified information transmitted. There were no war plans discussed. Why did the Atlantic downgrade their allegation about war plans to attack plans? They're now playing word games because they know this was sensationalist spin from a reporter who is well known for doing this. We have said all along no war plans were discussed, no classified material was sent. You have the Secretary of Defense saying that. You have the Director of the CIA, the Director of National Intelligence, the FBI Director, all testifying to that under oath, and they should be trusted with that.
To be clear, Americans can make the decision for themselves, but whether it's
Sure.
you said it's not war plans. Would you characterize these as military plans, military operation plans?
I would characterize this messaging thread as a policy discussion, a sensitive policy discussion, surely, amongst high-level cabinet officials and senior staff. And I'm so glad, Peter, that you said the American public can decide for themselves, because I think the American public should decide for themselves based on the outcome of this operation. And what happened in this operation? Terrorists that were allowed to run wild by the Biden administration were killed because of the direction and the determination of this president and his team. And this message also shows, this messaging thread also proved that President Trump has an incredibly dynamic team who is working incredibly hard, flying all over the world to secure world peace and to fix up the foreign policy crises that the previous administration left for this team to inherit.
So to be clear, we all in this room and around the country would agree that we're glad no American service members were harmed and we're glad that the mission was a success. We'll stipulate that. But the president said, that Pete Hegseth said, none of this was classified. So given the president has seen it now, and given the president understands that significant military plans are deemed classified as secret, how does the president view none of this, which details times and weapons and more, as being not classified?
I've already been asked and answered this question. The president's thoughts on this remain the same today as they were yesterday,
On what basis,
as
I'm
well as the Secretary of Defense. This question has been asked and answered. There was no classified material discussed. Jackie.
On what basis I was asking?
Go ahead, Jackie.
Thank you, Caroline. So why aren't launch times on a mission strike classified?
Again, I would defer you to the Secretary of Defense's statement he put out this morning. There were various reasons he listed, things that were not included in that messaging thread that were not classified. And again, going back to the American public, do you trust the Secretary of Defense, who was nominated for this role, voted by the United States Senate into this role, who has served in combat, honorably served our nation in uniform? Or do you trust Jeffrey Goldberg, who is a registered Democrat and an anti-Trump sensationalist reporter? This president and this national security team are putting our national security and the American people first. We are restoring American strength around the world, and the results of this operation speak for themselves.
Putting aside Jeffrey Goldberg, though, just for for American service members who are going to have to carry out these missions in the future, what I guess the message that's coming from the response to all this that we're hearing is that nothing sensitive happened, and I guess the logical conclusion of that is that if these messages had gone out publicly prior to the launch, that wouldn't have been a risk to service members. I don't know that they're comfortable with that. So can you explain, had these messages been published, would the plans have moved forward? Would the launch have still taken off?
What I can tell you is that the President, as the Commander-in-Chief of our United States Armed Forces, and Secretary Pete Hegseth, who is an incredible man and a warfighter himself, take the lives of our American service members